Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Lynne Connolly, Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion, Standard Life Aberdeen, and on what are we waiting for? Why financial services needs to embrace inclusion right now. All that happening in Flex and the City.
Hello, everybody. This is Rachel Treese for Flex in the City, and we've got a very, very exciting edition this afternoon. I'm really thrilled to have Lynne Connolly. Lynne is the Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion at Standard Life Aberdeen. I've just been chatting to her before this podcast, and I know it's going to be a great one. So, Lynne, a big welcome to you on Flex in the City.
Thank you, Rachel.
Lovely to see you. And I know it's warm in Scotland and it's warm in Luxembourg. So I'd love to know if you could tell both myself and our listeners a little bit about you and how you ended up doing the job you're doing, diversity and inclusion in Standard Life Aberdeen. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. So I'll start with just describing myself in a way that I encourage others to describe themselves in the role that I do. And that's about what's visible and what's invisible, because both of those things make up the person that you are. So visibly, of course, I have a job title of Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion in a terrific financial services company. I'm a mum of 2 teenagers. I'm the eldest of 4 siblings, and I'm a very family and friends orientated person. Visibly, I'm a white, middle-aged, I hate to say it, woman working in financial...
Join the club.
Based in Scotland, as you can tell from the accent, but undertaking a global role. So that's what people see when they look at me. But there's a lot more underneath the surface. If you think of the iceberg principle about the 20% that you see above the line and the 80% below the line. And I firmly believe that people need to understand the invisible as much as the visible to be able to help you be at your best. So things that aren't visible that people wouldn't know about me: I have an invisible disability that I deal with on a daily basis. I'm a flexible working mum who is a primary carer for 2 children. I was the first in my family to go to university. I'm an absolute extrovert, so I think outside my head rather than inside. And I've got experience across a number of regions and sectors. So these are just some of the things that I would share in describing myself. Just in terms of my journey, it's been a journey where I started out life as the eldest of 4 siblings in a very hardworking family with a history of working for charity, of volunteering, a real sort of drive around contribution in different ways to make life better. And I attended state school. I wasn't the cleverest. I wasn't the sportiest. I wasn't the most popular. I did not have the latest designer clothes. But through school, I had some inspiring teachers who really nurtured a potential that they saw in me around leadership. And not only inspired me in terms of the subjects that I love to do, but inspired me to go on to become head girl of the school. And I learned absolutely loads of lessons about leadership in that time, in that raw opportunity. I then moved on to university. I attended a university which is at St Andrews, which I absolutely loved, but where the demographic was very different to the state school that I had come from. Wow. And I felt massively out of place during that period of time. I was one of the few that had to work as they went through university. I was juggling 2 jobs, a day job and a bar work in the evening. But it also inspired me a love of learning, an ability to learn to work with different people from all sorts of backgrounds, which has stood me in great stead moving on. And then very quickly moving into work, I started off in a graduate scheme in retail banking. Some real experiences there that have stuck with me. Some positive ones about working with customers to really, help them achieve their dreams, getting that first car, buying that first house. But equally some very tough experiences, having to repossess homes from hardworking families who had who had fallen on hard times. And these experiences really stick with you. I then moved into HR, which became my passion. But that experience that I had sitting in front of customers directly really has helped me in financial services to be what I hope is an effective business-facing and commercial HR person. But my love has come in talent, in organisational development, in diversity and inclusion. I absolutely am motivated by the drive to help others reach their potential in a place that they can be themselves.
You're just so passionate, aren't you, about diversity and inclusion? What really excites you about it, Lynne?
I think for me, there's a couple of things. One is at the very base level, for me, it's about creating equal chances. So I have a firm belief that it doesn't matter what your background is, you bring talent. And that talent might be different to the person sitting next to you, but you are talented. And therefore, it's about finding the right place and the right ways for you to develop that talent and for you to contribute that talent into our industry or across community. So it really drives me to create the playing field where diversity of talent can come through. But as a financial career, financial services person, I'm also driven by the commerciality of this. Yeah. There is just a very simple economic equation that says that if you have individuals, all types of individuals participating and making an economic contribution, then we are much more high-performing sector. We're a much more high-performing country, wherever you're sitting in the world. So I'm passionate about from that real commercial hard line about let's just make sure we're harnessing the talents of everybody in an industry that has increasingly diverse clients and customers.
Absolutely. And talking about increasingly diverse, you have two teenagers who are going to enter the workforce at some point in the future. How do you think financial services can better attract the young talent that's out there in the world?
I think I find it sad to hear some of the perceptions of the financial services industry. I think we are perceived to be the sort of greedy big bonus bankers. And actually, I don't think we always get across that financial services is full of different types of people, normal people. And so I think we still have a way to go in breaking down some of the perceptions that might be around our industry. I think practically some of the things that we can do are really getting across that diversity of careers that you can have in financial services. I started off as a banker and a financial advisor. I've ended up in a global head of D&I role. So, there's a real diversity to that. I think the key thing for me is thinking about what's important to young people. And it's about joining purpose-led organisations. Yeah. You can see that through the care and the environment, inequalities and climate change, etc. And so I think we need to better get across the role that we're playing in society from a purpose-led approach. And I think we need to bring them in with a call to action, the possibility of what our financial services sector can be going into the future. Our clients and customers are not homogenous. We've got to understand the diversity of their needs. We're increasingly, yes, we're human capital businesses where the talents of our people are critical, but we're increasingly data-led and agile and pacey-led industry, which, the call to action for them is to come and join and be part of that journey and help to create and shape it in a more diverse way.
Absolutely. And it's also, isn't it, about diversifying exactly who we put in front of financial services customers and clients?
Absolutely. So people believe what they can see. So companies like mine can use all the words in the world, but if we are sitting in front of, for example, a young person who's inherited wealth and hasn't really engaged in their financial sort of future intensively to that date, it depends who turns up to advise them. Now, this isn't about being ageist or, making judgments on anybody. We have an advisor population, just to give one example, in the UK, where the average age is 61 years old. In the US, it's about 70. And those people are brimming with experience that they can bring to the table. But it's about saying, who's the team that you put in front of people? Can we diversify it to bring that experience and also bring that connection that builds the trust, that builds the empathy, that builds the relationship with all types of diverse customers and clients? They're not a homogenous group, so we can't keep putting the same teams out on the pitch.
Absolutely. So talking about leadership, let's go on to leadership, Lynne. In the world we live in now, who would you say is the most inspiring leader that you know, and why?
I would say it's probably a group of leaders that I feel really inspired by at the moment. And it's the sort of young female political leaders that we're seeing across the world. When you look at the sort of list of presidents and prime ministers, it's actually really interesting to see just how many across all continents are now female leaders. The reason I follow leaders like Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, Sanna Marin in Finland, etc., is not because they're women. It's because they're women, they're young, they're juggling family, but most of all, it's the way that they're leading. And they really inspire me in this sort of empathetic, inclusive leadership that they bring. If you look at Jacinda Ardern and her response to the Christchurch shooting, it was about, what do my people need from me? And she went out and she was there, she was present, she was visible. And I think when you lead from an empathetic and inclusive place, that flows through the type of culture that you create across the country, the policies that you put in place. And what we're now starting to see is real shifts to family-friendly policies that mean that economic participation in the workplace is not driven by gender stereotypical roles, for example. So I feel really inspired by some of the actions that that group of leaders are taking.
Very good. And what about in your financial services career? Has there been any, have there been any leaders that have really inspired you in that industry?
Yeah, I mean, I've been incredibly lucky. We've got so many inspiring leaders across our industry. And for me, a lot of leaders, what they have in common in inspiring me is they take others along with them. They're always themselves. They don't just talk authenticity, they are authentic. They listen more than they talk, and they're really curious about people, what makes them tick and what makes them at their best. A couple of people that would stand out for me, and I hope I'm not embarrassing them in saying it. One is Sandy Begbie, who's the Chief Executive of Scottish Financial Enterprise now, and he has, alongside whatever role he's been doing, really driven forward progress around youth employment, particularly youth employment for groups of kids coming out of school, college, and coming from really less privileged backgrounds. So for them, entering financial services might not be a norm, but he has absolutely driven forward the agenda, really engaged the whole industry around it. And I find that incredibly inspiring. One other leader I would point out is a previous CEO that I worked for, David Nish. And what inspired me about him was his way of working. So I pointed out to him one day that he must spend his day just talking to the people in the company. And he turned around and said to me, "That's my job. My job is to listen to you as the person, the subject matter expert, is to enable you to do your job, to help you remove any barriers to doing that. But I don't have the answers that you do." So we play different roles. And this was a CEO of a business talking to a relatively senior consultant at that stage, not another sort of CEO, and really just saying, "This is how I want to work with you. You're important, and my job is to make you, be the best that you can be."
Yes, a real vulnerable and inclusive leadership.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Brilliant. So let's talk about game changers, because we always like to get the magic wand out in Flex in the City. So what, in your opinion, Lynne, would be a real game changer that could truly make this industry better, more sustainable? What's your view on that?
I'll probably be a little bit greedy here, Rachel, and ask for two, if that's all right. I think for me, it's the opportunity to flip things around with the end in mind. So I think the perception when I speak to young people is that financial services can be seen as quite intellectual, quite inward facing, almost with a sense of we've got the answers, we know the products and services that you need. And I would love us to keep flipping that around. And the reason I say keep is because I think we're doing some of this. I think we just need to do it quicker. But flip it around to really create the possibility of working with our consumer base and saying, what is it that you need? Help us and come and help us to create that. So really bringing them in to help us shape what comes next, the future with us, really thinking about what are they going to need in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, because it's not what we have now. It's different. And then it's a way that we can also have an accessible route into our company. Come and work with us to shape this, shape the possibility. That's what I would love to see. And I think the second piece for me is the demographics that we have in our workforces. We still do not reflect the consumer base that we have across UK and global markets. And I think we've got opportunities to really speed up our progress around that.
Yeah, so you've talked about it being really too slow. So we're talking about a real elephant in many ways. So how do you go about, Lynne, changing something which is both systemic and societal, from a norms perspective?
It's funny you use the word elephant, actually, Rachel, because I talk quite a lot and think quite a lot in the concept of the elephant and the rider, where the rider is the sort of rational brain, the directing the direction of travel, setting the pathway out and moving along that pathway. The elephant is the big emotional brain. It's the thinking, the perceptions, the fears that come around that, and a sense of where do you even start when you're trying to move an elephant. For me, it is very much about making a start, not waiting for the whole elephant. It's about identifying the priorities, the theories around nudge theory, around, embed it through all of your business processes. Diversity and inclusion is not something that is different to how you run your business. It is the way that you run your business, or one of the ways that you run your business. And so the more that we embed it, the less it feels like a big additional elephant to move, and more about how we just run sustainable, responsible businesses. So I would say bring it into priorities, make a start, get moving, build the momentum, embedding it through business processes, keep pushing. In the D&I space, you will sometimes move one step forward and 2 steps back. That's okay, as long as you're keeping true to the direction and keeping moving forward. And what I would say is create an army. D&I is not something that just people with D&I in their title in financial services can make a difference. It's something that every single person working in financial services can make a difference to the colleagues around them and our customers and communities. So, creating that army and really, really thinking about the roles that we can each play.
Absolutely. And I'm passionate about sustainable performance. So, Lynne, how do you think diversity and inclusion can really impact sustainable performance in companies?
Well, I think what we're seeing is a growth in interest in ESG, environment, social and governance, and the way companies bring that to life. D&I sits very much in the social space. It's part of how we should run our businesses. Look, I'm not going to talk about all the business cases. Listeners will have seen this and read things till they're blue in the face around how diversity leads to better performance, better risk management, better talent attraction, better commercial results. For me, it's stripping it back. Right. And when you take it back to a key question, which is, when do people perform at their best? And they perform at their best when they feel safe, psychologically safe, when they feel valued, when they feel like they belong, that they're connected with others, that they're contributing to something bigger, and that they have a voice. And what I've just described there is creating an inclusive environment with inclusive behaviours. So I really believe that to have high performance cultures across all our businesses, it starts with the right environment, an inclusive environment with inclusive leaders who really level the playing field for everybody to perform and progress. And I know that you will perhaps challenge and say, well, you would say that, wouldn't you, because of the job that you do? But there's plenty of research out there that backs up that statement.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Lynne. Let's imagine we've got some up and coming leaders in your organisation or other organisations in the industry, and you're giving them your best advice on how they could be an even better inclusive leader. What would you tell them? What would you invite them to do?
I think there's a part about what I would say to them in their career in general, and then there's a part about inclusivity. So in their career in general, I would really encourage them to what I would term as find their fire. Mm-hmm. Try different things, really find what they're passionate about. That's what I've done, and it's taken me a few mistakes along the way. But the role that I do now gets me out of bed in the morning. It keeps me going when I feel like I'm going forward and backwards. And I think finding that place where you really feel that you can be motivated by it is really important. I think the other thing I would say is to follow a leader and surround yourself with colleagues that really inspire you. I've learned in my career, I've worked for many, many leaders, and I know that I'm at my best when I've got a leader who manages me in a way that is giving me space, but giving me support, but is curious about who I am and what they can do to help me, and who brings a bit of sort of their own drive and their own authenticity every day to that. So finding a leader who inspires you, but taking the learning from the colleagues that surround you. I found myself in a first job in a bank branch, surrounded by one of the most diverse teams that I've worked with in my career. And I took into that role a lot of learning that I'd had through various roles that I'd done through university, etc. And it was really about opening yourself up to be curious about them, what's important to them, how can you support them as much as they support you, really thinking about the environment, being prepared to roll up your sleeves, to do whatever's required, to collaborate together, to move forward as a team. And what I found from that experience, which I think some of my other graduate colleagues, which maybe had approached it in a slightly different way, didn't find, was that when I moved 6 months later into my first big job, a sales manager of a city centre branch, that whole team was behind me. They could not do enough to help me to be a success. So I think it's about finding people that you can learn from, that are curious about you and being curious about them, learning to work with all sorts of people and valuing what they bring is really what inclusivity is about.
Absolutely. And so when you're not working at Standard Life Aberdeen in diversity and inclusion and you're outside work, what is it that brings you great pleasure, Lynne? What do you like doing?
It probably sounds twee, but my children, I'm absolutely privileged to be the mom of two remarkable children, and who just surprise me in a good way every single day. I love to travel with them. I'm trying to instill a love of different cultures, nationalities, ethnicities, a love of learning, a curiosity, because I think those are skills that stand them in great stead for going forward. And just love surrounding myself with great friends, great family, lovely food. If I think about myself outside work, my passion for what I do inside work definitely carries through outside work as well. What my kids see in me is somebody who cannot stand by an injustice, and they understand why I do the job that I do, because we talk about that. But I think two things that I've learned outside work, which influence how I am inside work, is I'm very aware of my privilege. And I've learned that over the last few years. I'm lucky to be born in a country where I don't have to worry about the safety of my children in the main. Yes, I went to state school, but I was brought up in a massively encouraging family. I even understand more about the privilege that comes with my skin colour and what white privilege is. And what I try to do is learn from that privilege, but also use that privilege for good. And how do I use my voice? How do I understand better? And how can I make things better for others? So that's one learning. The second learning from my personal life is something I don't talk about or share particularly often, is that I live with a life-limiting illness.
Right.
And that has a massive impact on my life. But the positive that has come out of that is that I live my life with a mantra of, what are you waiting for? Mm-hmm. And what it means is that every single day I'm thinking about, what can I do today? How can I prompt others today? How do I use this day to think actively about pushing things forward? And it flows through my personal and professional life. I remember sitting one day when the kids were smaller and thinking, I would love to go to take the kids to Disney in Florida. And I just thought of this mantra, what are you waiting for? And I just got in the car and I went to the travel agent and I booked to go to Disney, and it was the best thing I did. So I try to live my life around that mantra, both personally and professionally.
Fantastic. And so my final question, Lynne, a big question. We're both working mothers of teenagers, and we know the wisdom that children have. What message do you think your children would give the financial services industry?
I refer to the fact that they inspire me every day. And some of the reasons they inspire me every day is because in this generation, they don't see difference. They just look at the person. So in a way that we perhaps in society haven't done before, they talk about all sorts of differences in nationalities and ethnicities and sexualities, the curiosity about sexuality, but that all of that's okay, I think is massively inspiring. And they do not stand by if there is an injustice or there is a behaviour to challenge. They speak up. Yeah. And I would love us just across financial services to just develop even more courage around this agenda. Let's speak up more. Let's drive forward more on the agenda. And I think for me, that lesson I've learned personally, what do we do to make every day count in this agenda? And really, what is it that we're waiting for? Applying that to financial services, and just, one of the people I work with in the company said, if we all tap on the table at the same time, we'll move forward quicker together. And that is absolutely true. So my ask of everybody listening is just, what are you waiting for? What is the thing that you can do today or tomorrow that just moves forward to make our financial services industry just more diverse, more accessible, and more inclusive?
Wow. So Lynne, you've passed the test. I've got the goosebumps. I've got tears behind my eyes. So thank you for being with us on Flex in the City, and thank you for helping make financial services a better and more inclusive place to be. So thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure, and my thanks to everybody that works on this journey with me.
You just listened to Flex in the City. Catch us on our next episode.